Good afternoon, Professor Alain Burlaud. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you. Good afternoon too.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to have you today. Unfortunately, you cannot be with us on December 8th. So that's why we are recording the session, this speech right now, for the 30-year ceremony of IFSAM, its 30 years anniversary. So you were in the executive of IFSAM as president-elect in 93, 94, then president for the period of 95 and 96, and finally, as the statutes of IFSAM established, 2 more years between 97 and 98 as past president. And this ceremony of the 30 years of IFSAM history is to celebrate to a large extent all the executives and other members of the council who actually played a significant role in the life of IFSAM. So it's for that reason that on behalf of the council and the executive committee, I would like to give to you this award for your outstanding service to IFSAM's development and governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xavier. It's a great pleasure to be here with you for the 30th anniversary of IFSAM. It's an important part of my professional life, and not only because many of my colleagues are friends, so it's not only a professional experience. So as you said, I was the president for 2 years in 95 and 96, but I will share with you a part of the history of IFSAM. It started in 1978 or 1988, I don't remember exactly. I was contacted by a German colleague, Horst Albach, and also by a Japanese colleague, Tasuko Noguchi. And they told me that they have the project to create an international federation of academic associations in management. So I thought it's a very good idea, but very pragmatically, they suggested to start with pre-conference workshops or meetings, and asked me to organize in 1989 the first pre-conference meeting on management and RD in France. It was quite successfully, even if it was a small working party with only, let's say, 50 participants. The year after, we had a pre-conference in Frankfurt in Germany, organized by Horst Albach, and it was also the founding conference for IFSAM. And then we had a follow-up conference on workshop in Niagara Falls the year after in 1991. But IFSAM's life started really with the World Congresses. The first World Congress was organized by Tasuko Noguchi in Tokyo in 1992. It was a huge event. He received 209 proposals and selected 114 papers. The proceedings of the conference are a book of 459 pages. And an important thing is that the presentations could be made either in English or in Japanese. This is the sign of a real international association. These World Congresses are organized every 2 years, every even year. So the next one was in Dallas organized by Janice Spier. And the subject was linking management scholars worldwide. It was also very successful with 177 papers, plus 8 symposia, and the proceedings are 255 pages long. 2 years later, in 1996, it was in Paris, a team of colleagues, among them Yvon Pequeux, who became president of IFSAM, Claude Simon and others, and myself. We organized the conference. We had 350 participants from 29 countries, so we became really international. We had 230 papers, so this means a lot of parallel sessions. And the proceedings were a book of 394 pages. 2 years later, it was my colleague and friend Santiago Garcia Echevarria who organized the World Congress in Alcalá de Henares. It's a lovely town very close to Madrid. For the first time, the proceedings were on a CD-ROM, but still with the same tradition, the papers could be presented in English or Spanish. In 2000, the World Congress was organized by my friend André Petit in Montreal. The proceedings were again on a CD-ROM, and the papers could be presented in 3 languages, English, French, or Spanish. It's important to know that all these world conferences were organized by the current president of IFSAM. So we had 2 hats, president of the organization and president of the organizing committee of the conference. We had, due to the success of the world conferences, many members who were candidates to host a world conference. But every 2 years, it makes that the last candidates would have the pleasure to organize the conference 10 years later. So we decided to organize every odd year a regional conference. I couldn't attend all regional conferences because we had many. I attended 3 of them in July 97 in Shanghai, in August 90, in August 97, the same year, in Brussels, and in July 99 in Beijing, in China. I have to explain you the difficulties we have, because of course the conference were very successful. It was at this time easy to travel. It's not true nowadays, but we had also difficulties, of course. Among these difficulties, the first one was we have been misperceived by the Academy of Management, the American Association, because the AOM had an international section. So they said, what's the purpose of having an international association? We are already international. And we are a very important association, of course. But the difference is that we wanted an association which was not an American association hosting foreigners, but a truly international association. Every country is represented on the council with the same voting rights. And our conferences are bilingual or trilingual, even in Montreal. So we had discussions, and we were lucky to have Janice Spier as the current president of IFSAM. Janice Spier was very well known in the US, and so she could manage the fact that finally AOM recognized IFSAM. We had also difficulties in my own country, in France. At this time, we did not have the equivalent of an academy of management. We had several academic associations, but specialized in accounting, finance, marketing, human resources management, etc. So as we did not have such an association, I asked the French Accounting Association to represent the French academics. Well, it was not really easy to get the approval from the Council of IFSAM, but finally we succeeded. A few years later, things changed. I could convince the foundation called Fondation Nationale pour l'Enseignement de la Gestion. It means National Foundation for Management Education. This foundation is under the control of the government, and this was also an obstacle, but nevertheless, this foundation could represent the French academics on our council. We had more or less the same difficulty with China, mainland China, of course. They had a Chinese Academy of Management, but this academy was under the supervision of the state, which is not in accordance with the academic tradition as we have in the Western world. So, but due to the very strong involvement of Z Shenchen, our colleague in China, who organized 2 regional conferences in Shanghai and Beijing, very successfully, finally, we enabled the Chinese Academy to become a member of IFSAM. So these are my professional memories, but I have also in my personal life memories. I had the pleasure to work with colleagues who became friends, and the friendship was really motivating for everybody. As anecdote, for the board meeting in '96, my wife and myself, we invited at home all the members of the board. We had an excellent dinner. One of my friends, who is a specialist, selected the best wines and everybody was happy. And I sent to Xavier the menu of this evening. Also, we met the different presidents and also the secretary, treasurer, etc. We met several times. Apart from our meetings, conferences, etc., for holidays, we met in Spain, in Japan, in Quebec, in the United States. I was invited by Horst Albach, who was at the origin of the association of the Federation. I was invited for his retirement festivities. And we are still in touch. We have also, and this is the poor side of this experience, we had the deaths of 3 past presidents or a president-elect. Caroline Dexter from the United States passed away in '97, just after having been elected president-elect. And Janice Spier, she passed away, I don't remember exactly, but in 2001 or 2, after the meeting in Montreal, where I saw her for the last time. And more recently, I think it's in 2016, Tasuko Noguchi passed away. Finally, my message is that really IFSAM is a very important association in the academic world for, of course, management academics. First of all, it's a meeting place for all specialties in management, accounting, finance, marketing, human resources management, etc. But also for related disciplines like computer sciences, mathematics, sociology. Spier, for instance, was a sociologist, and psychology, history, etc. And these meetings always were organized respecting the national traditions and the national way of organizing ourselves, the national languages, of course, because the language is also important in the way we think, and our traditions also in the way we carry on research. So therefore, IFSAM was really something unique. And I strongly believe that standardizing research is killing research. Research needs diversity. Thank you very much. And I am very, very happy and grateful to see that the IFSAM executive and council, executive board and council are organizing this wonderful event for the 30th year of IFSAM. Thank you.
Thank you, really a big thank you, because as President-elect of IFSAM, I want to thank you on behalf of the Council and the Executive Committee for having taken the time to record this session, which is containing not just factual elements of the history of IFSAM, which people can find in our website and on the web, but also your personal anecdotes and reflections and thoughts about IFSAM history and IFSAM role. So thank you so much for this. We regret that you cannot be with us synchronously on the 8th of December, but we are very happy that we will have this recording, which will be a testament of your participation in the event, and also will be put into the IFSAM website so that it can be accessed by other people and also in the future. Thank you again.
So much, Xavier.
So it's been really great to hear you about, a short description of the history of IFSAM, particularly since the beginning and up until the late 90s, early 2000s. And given that we have today this unique opportunity to have this conversation with you, and the fact that you won't be able to be with us on the 8th of December, I wanted to ask you a few more questions about that early history of IFSAM. And to the extent that it is possible for you to share also your kind of personal impressions and appreciations of different actors and events of that early history. So probably first things first, it's very interesting to see, how collective action happens. And I think this is a phenomenon that it's so important for the world, right? And in this case, IFSAM is a case of collective action, right? For the creation of a worldwide community, right? To provide and preserve this cosmopolitan or international, multi-domestic, multinational view of management academia. So, for collective action, however, there is always, as we know from research, there is always need for some leaders, for some collective leaders who initiate and get round up the other people in kind of a social movement, in this case, a small social movement, but still. So for the case of IFSAM, I guess it's Horst Albach, if I understand it correctly, who actually got in touch with different actors in different parts of the world. And given that we won't have him on December 8th, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about Professor Albach.
Horst Albach was a young academic just after World War II. And he was one of the German professors who, at the very beginning of his career, went to the United States. And he stayed in the US maybe, I don't know exactly, but maybe 2 years or something like that. So he was in touch with American colleagues. He spoke fluently English, of course. And this generation after World War II in Germany, you must understand what Germany was in the 50s. He wanted to build a new Germany in a new world. Never again the Second World War. And this is very important to understand. And he was also somebody who liked very much to travel, and he liked also to speak different foreign languages. He was fluent in English, of course, but he spoke also French, Spanish, and he always tried to use the national language from the country where he was, you know. And so he had all these international contacts and had this idea in the late 80s to build a federation of management, national management association. This was really a wonderful idea, because nobody had this idea, even if it was in fact a simple idea, but nobody had this idea before. Or nobody tried to launch such an organization before. Horst was also somebody who very rapidly gave a role to his colleagues. The danger was that Horst, who was very prestigious in his country, he's really recognized as one of the leading professors in Germany in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s. And it was not the Horst Albach Association. So he was at the origin of the project, but the first president was Tasuku Noguchi, and not Horst Albach. And after that, the different presidents were never Horst Albach. He was still there, helping, giving advices, giving us his contacts to, for instance, organize the different world congresses, but he was never sitting on the first row and saying, "It's me, it's me, it's me." So this is very important, because he was able to create this very friendly atmosphere with no competition between us. Nobody tried to say, "I'm more intelligent than my neighbor." Just we were working together and having some fun in the evening, having fun in restaurant, having fun during the meetings, but always very efficient and modest. This was the heritage of Horst Albach.
It's so interesting in so many ways, because as a case of the life of an organization and the role of its founding leader, I think it's pretty unique case in which the founding leader, who takes so much effort, right, in gathering the support and membership in this collective action effort, so soon disappears or goes into the shadow, right? It's so rare, I think.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. Another point that I have come to learn in the few years that I've been a member of the council of IFSAM thanks to a large extent to Michael Morley, but now more acquainted with the statutes myself as president-elect, the fact that each full member organization has 2 votes. Every full member has the same power. It's not a function of the number of members that they have in their own organization or the size of the country in terms of population. Everyone has the same voting rights. And this really creates a platform of equal power, a really truly multilateral platform. Is that something that came from him also? How did that come about?
I don't remember if it came from him, but probably because the statutes were defined during the founding conference in 1990. Yes, 1990, in Niagara Falls. And no, it was in Frankfurt, sorry, in Germany. Yes, it's Horst Albach who wrote the statutes, in fact. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. So you mentioned the role of the actual president, the second president who took very soon over, right? So Professor Noguchi, the late Professor Noguchi, unfortunately he passed away, as you said, several years ago, a few years ago. I was wondering, you know, you mentioned the tremendous success that the conference had in Tokyo. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about him, about his role also as president-elect and president and then past president.
Yeah. Well, Tasuku Noguchi was very influential in his own country. All the colleagues I met in Japan, they knew very well Noguchi. You know? He was an important colleague. And he was also very close to the Japanese industry and the Japanese companies. For instance, he has organized during, or no, it was just after the World Conference in '92, visits in Japanese companies. And this was very, very interesting because at the beginning of the 1990s, a few colleagues from Europe, for instance, have been to Japan. It was not my first visit to Japan, but a lot of colleagues discovered the country at this time. And we could meet executives or CEOs of big Japanese companies explaining what is quality management, for instance. And he could get for this conference in '92 a financial support from many, many companies. And also from the Japanese government. This is surprising, but the government was very happy to host an international academic community. Again, one must imagine what was Japan in the 80s or 90s. It was not the Japan we know now. After World War II, Japan was, the country was almost totally destroyed. They had to rebuild. And in the 80s, 90s, the Japanese industry became more and more powerful. But still, they did not have the statute of an important country in the world. So therefore, he get all this support. And even years later, when I went back several times to Japan, each time I wanted to have a contact with a Japanese company, I asked Noguchi, and 2 days later, I had the answer. And this is really very interesting because in many countries, including France, the academic community is isolated on an island, an ivory tower, and doesn't speak too much to the executives of companies. And this was not the fact in Japan.
This is very interesting because indeed in the statutes of IFSAM, it says that the federation will reflect and try to develop standards of competence in management education, in management research, but also in management practice. And indeed, this is a critical issue that the entire field of management academia has been facing for the last probably 25, 30 years, the typical discussion between rigor and the balance between rigor and relevance, right? Relevance for management, for organizations, now more broadly for society, and with the term impact that nowadays people are using. And indeed, it seems that through this conference, I guess many non-Japanese scholars could get access to what Ushi or Pascal Anathos or Edgar Schein were writing in the early 80s about, right, the Japanese management specificity and how it was it could affect also in terms of the competition with other companies from other parts of the world. So that's indeed very, very interesting. I was wondering if you could also tell us a little bit more about the third president of IFSAM, Janice Bayer, who was also president of the Academy of Management. You know, you mentioned that she was well respected. She was also editor-in-chief of the Academy of Management Journal, one of the journals of the Academy. And these difficulties that you mentioned regarding the role of IFSAM, the need for IFSAM, given the existence of the Academy and its international outlook, which has over the years increased. So could you tell us a little bit more about Jan Bayer?
Yes, well, Janice Bayer, as I told you, she was her background was she was a sociologist, but interested in management, organizations, etc. She was very courageous because she was very strongly involved in the American academic community. And she supported IFSAM more or less against her national academic community. It was perceived as something which was organized against the Academy of Management. But in the mind of Janice Bayer, it was not at all against. It was something different. And so she had difficulty to explain this to the her American colleagues. Her background, her professional experience made that she was not closely linked with the professional world. She had not so many contacts with the American industry as, for instance, Tasuku Noguchi, or even Horst Albach too, had very strong links with German companies. Janice was more a pure academic person, but she was very strongly involved in IFSAM as a president. Caroline Dexter, who was, after her term, elected as president-elect, was a very close friend of Janice Bayer. They knew each other for maybe 20 or 30 years. And it was very successful and very profitable for IFSAM to have these two persons working hand in hand. And to some extent, they get the recognition of IFSAM for a part of the academic American community. It's important because, of course, we cannot ignore the United States.
Of course. If the papers that I have in my possession about the history of IFSAM don't lie, it seems that Caroline Dexter was assistant secretary while you were president, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
right.
That is right.
And she, as you mentioned, she got elected to become president-elect before she unfortunately passed away. As a matter of fact, there is, you might know that at the Academy of Management, there is a Caroline Dexter All Academy Award. So an award named on her behalf for the best international paper. I also wanted to ask you, and this will be the, I guess the two final questions for today. I hope that we had more time and I could ask you more things, because it's very interesting and very important, I think, for not just for IFSAM, but for the field of management academia across the world. I would like you to tell us a bit more about these regional conferences, and in particular about the involvement of our Chinese colleagues, to which you already refer. You refer to Professor Chen, Z Shenchen, who I had the pleasure and the privilege to meet in the council meeting in Shanghai 2 years ago. And I have a great memory of that encounter. I'm not sure that she will be able to join us on December 8th, either because of his advanced age and family situation. But as you said, he's been the main representative of the Chinese Academy of Management Science organization, CAMS, which him being based in Beijing, I think is also based in Beijing, this organization. But then a few years later, I guess, we have a second Chinese organization, CINIMA, the Center for National Economic Management Association, which is based in Shanghai, and other Chinese colleagues have been also very involved, including creating what it's called the IFSAM China Committee, which has just organized the 24th World and Eastern Management Forum this past weekend, and from which our current president, Zhang Yang, is a member of, is a vice president of. So could you tell us a little bit more about Professor Chen, his involvement in IFSAM and the joining of the second organization, if it was during your times, please?
I met Z Shenchen for the first time. It was in Tokyo for the World Congress, '92. Again, at this time, China was not the second most powerful economy in the world. China was a developing country. A few Europeans or Americans had visited China, and Chinese people could difficultly travel abroad. He was one of the pioneers from this area, from this period. He anticipated that China would become part of the international community and not a closed country. And he was very keen to join this international academic community to learn about what management does mean in the Western world. And he is a very friendly colleague. So all this made that I supported his application to become, for the Chinese Academy, to become a member of IFSAM. And as I told, it was not very easy because it's controlled by the government. It was anyway, I don't know now, but at this time it was, yes. And he was very present for all IFSAM's meetings and conferences many, many years. I don't know now because I saw him for the last time, it was in 2010 or 2011. Since that time, I haven't seen him again. I was aware also through him of this competition between Beijing and Shanghai, two different worlds with different objectives. As you know, Beijing is the political center of China, and Shanghai the economic center of China. And I know that many years ago I wasn't anymore on the board or on the council of IFSAM, but we had the application of another association based in Shanghai. I don't know what happened after, if this other association become a second Chinese member.
Yes, they did.
They did, okay.
Yes.
But Shen was very well known and respected also in the political environment of China at this time in the 90s.
Very interesting. Indeed, as I said, the second organization, Sinima, became member of IFSAM, and the current president comes from Yang Zhang, comes from that organization.
Oh, okay.
Maybe to close our conversation, I wanted to refer to the kind of the transition to the times after your presidency. And you have already talked about the Japanese colleagues from JABA, the Japanese Association for Business Administration, the second president, Noguchi, and there was also Professor Kurokawa, who was also part of the executive committee as treasurer first and secretary during your presidency. I wanted to ask you about your successor, Santiago García Echevarría, coming from the Spanish Association of Management, ACD, in which I actually participated in my early years, I think in its fourth conference in '97. So exactly the year that he became president of IFSAM. Yeah. And basically, also, I wanted to refer, I think, to this aspect that you also mentioned, which seems to me very salient and very important for efficient and effective collective action. Friendship helps a lot. And you mentioned this, and I think that from the sociological perspective that Jan Bayer represented, this has been in the US and worldwide, probably with Mark Granovetter, with his work on embeddedness, social embeddedness of economic activity, his article in 1985, but also the work of Pierre Bourdieu with Capital Culturel and other studies of the field of human activity, of human action, have brought the salience of social relationships, which can be positive or negative, right? It's not always fun, but it can be fun. And it seems to me that this is something very salient, which comes across your description of that, of those early years of IFSAM. So, you know, as I said, maybe you can, in closing, relate to that and you know, the fact of the incoming President Santiago García Echevarría, with the addition of the association that he represented, the Spanish Association.
Yeah. Well, Santiago, when I met him for the first time during the council meetings, became very rapidly a friend. We have both in common a German background. I lived many years in Germany, and Santiago studied in Germany. We spoke together in German, and Santiago was also a close friend of Horst Albach, and he was one of his former students. he was very efficient in organizing everything, especially in his home country in Spain. He had strong support from his university, from some of his colleagues, and also strong links with companies in Spain. So he was really fully in accordance with the culture, the emerging culture of IFSAM. And as he was in line with this culture, it was very easy to take advantage of his experience, his network, etc. And it was important also to get a foot in the Spanish-speaking part of the world, not only Spain, but also Latin America, etc. And so Santiago was really an excellent president. I was still in touch with him. I met him for the last time. It was maybe last year or 2 years ago in Madrid. And you see, he's still active also. This is very important. Mm-hmm. If I remember, he signed an article with Horst Albach, published in a German journal, on friendship and management. I don't remember exactly the title of this article, but I could try to find the article.
Yes, that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
So, as you know, during this event, this celebration ceremony on December 8th, we will also honor another Frenchman, Yvon Pequeux, who, representing FENEJ, has been so active in IFSAM as president-elect, president, past president, and treasurer also after his presidency. And we also hope to have during the ceremony the presence of the current Director General of FENEJ, Jérôme Cabi, who is the new Director General. And so I guess that FENEJ owes it to you to be a member of IFSAM. And we have, IFSAM, I think, has greatly benefited from the contributions of the representatives from FENEJ. And now, as I was telling you, we also have a second French association, l'Association Internationale de Management Stratégique, IMS, for which we are very happy. And Isabelle Bouty, the president, will join us also on December 8th. So I just want to thank you again as president-elect and incoming president in 2021. So learning for me this opportunity also to learn more about the history of IFSAM and how the realities of the world and of the management academia have changed in these 30 years, which for some, probably when we were 25 or 30 years sounded a lot. Maybe now they sound not so long, but it seems to me that in 30 years, many, many things have happened, have really radically transformed the world and also management academia. And so I guess being aware of this is just being aware of this and being able to converse about this with you, it's a real treasure. So thank you so much. Merci.
Well, thank you very much, Xavier. Congratulations for organizing this event. It's very important for an organization to keep a track of its culture. Because if we have the same cultural background, decision-making becomes easy. I would say also a word about André Petit, who was the president after Santiago, so in 99 and 2000, who is also a very close friend. And I hope this will continue. I'm sure that the very friendly contacts we had together will one day, maybe in a few months, give us the opportunity to meet physically and have a good lunch or dinner in a restaurant and continue to manage through pleasure, culture, and mutual respect.
Absolutely. I also hope so. Even though it might take few months, given the current situation, hopefully it will evolve positively. But I think that it's great that we take this opportunity. It's really 2020 is the year of the 30th anniversary of IFSAM. And even if it's not the same, we cannot share a meal, which is so important for Mediterranean cultures, right? But we can still meet and exchange through this technology, which as we are discovering, and as we know, I think from the history of technology and innovation, they are a double-edged sword. They bring positive things. They facilitate our lives, human life, in so many ways, but they also bring new challenges and downsides. So I'm really happy that we have this opportunity. And as you know, we have announced it in the social media, in our website also. The council recently decided to establish an advisory board. And so we are hoping to appoint the members of this advisory board, to which we would like to appoint committed, devoted, loyal members to IFSAM like you. So we hope that we will be able to count on your help.
Thank you. Oh.